We hear a lot about migration, but some of the biggest movements of people on the planet happen almost completely out of the headlines. Today, we're going to look at one of these, a massive human river flowing across Eurasia, and it's driven by forces you might not see coming.
I mean, think about it. What really makes millions of people just leave everything behind? To pack up their entire life, say goodbye to everyone they know, and just go? It's a huge decision, right? Nobody takes that lightly.
So, to really wrap our heads around something this big, we don't need some super complicated theory. Actually, it comes down to a really simple tool. It's a framework that helps us break this whole thing down into two basic, powerful forces.
And here it is. It's all about push and pull factors. Seriously, think of it like a magnet. You've got push factors. Those are the forces that are basically shoving people away from home, making things difficult, maybe even impossible. And then you have the pull factors, the things that are attracting them to a new place. The promise of a job, a better life, more opportunity. Every single migration story, big or small, is really just a balance of these two things.
Okay, so let's put this tool to work. We're going to look at a perfect case study. This incredible migration corridor connecting Central Asia, we're talking countries like Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, with the big economic engines to their north, Russia and Kazakhstan.
And look, this is not some small regional thing we're talking about. Researchers say this flow of people is second in scale only to the migration from Mexico to the United States. Let that sink in. We're talking millions and millions of people on the move. This is easily one of the most important migration flows happening anywhere in the world today.
So, let's start with the push. What is driving all these people to leave? Well, to get that, you have to look at the situation on the ground back in Central Asia. For a lot of folks, the choice to leave isn't about chasing some grand dream. It's about simple, raw necessity.
And it's not just one thing, it's a whole mix of problems, right? You've got industries that are declining, wages so low you can't even support a family, and just a massive shortage of decent jobs. All of this together creates this economic pressure cooker that's basically forcing people to look elsewhere.
And this right here, this shows you the demographic engine behind the whole thing. It's pretty amazing when you look at it. On one hand, Central Asia has a massive youth boom. Millions of young, ambitious people are hitting the job market, but there are no jobs for them. Then you look north to Russia, and it's the complete opposite. An aging country, a shrinking workforce, and a desperate need for labor. It's this huge demographic mismatch, and migration is the natural solution.
Okay, so that covers the push factors. But what about the pull? What is it about Russia and Kazakhstan that's acting like such a powerful magnet for all these workers?
Well, there are a bunch of reasons. The most obvious one, of course, is jobs and higher wages. But it's way more than just money. Think about it. Because of the shared Soviet history, there are already these deep cultural connections. And here's the kicker. A lot of people in Central Asia already speak Russian. That is a massive advantage. It just removes a huge barrier to getting a job and settling in. On top of all that, it's just geographically easier to get there than, say, Europe.
And this chart? Wow, this really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? Just look at these numbers from back in 2015. Over 885,000 workers from Uzbekistan alone. Almost 440,000 from Tajikistan. I mean, these two countries completely dominate the flow of labor into Russia. It just goes to show you how vital this corridor really is.
All right, so we've got the economic push and pull. We've got the demographics. But there's another huge piece to this puzzle, a political layer that acts like a giant amplifier. It's called the Eurasian Economic Union, the EAEU for short, and it has totally changed the rules of the game here.
So the whole idea behind the EAU was to create a common market, kind of like the EU, free movement of goods, labor, the whole shebang. But here's the really crucial part. It's not a simple one-size-fits-all system, not at all. What it actually created was this complicated, multi-level system for who gets to work where and how easily.
Basically, it boils down to this. Depending on what passport you hold, you're in one of three tiers. Tier 1, the top level, is for citizens of EAU countries, like Kyrgyzstan. They get the VIP treatment, no work permit needed. Tier 2 is for folks from visa-free countries, like Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. They're in the middle. They still need a work permit, but it's a special, easier to get one. And then there's Tier 3 for everyone else, and they have to go through the whole visa and permit headache. So you can see how this system really directs the flow of workers. So what you end up with is this incredibly deep, powerful interdependence between these countries. It's truly a two-way street. You've got labor flowing north and money flowing south,
And this constant exchange is fundamentally reshaping the economies on both sides of the equation.
Okay, get ready for this number. 47%. Just let that sink in. In 2015, the money sent home by workers from abroad, we call that remittances, made up almost half of Tajikistan's entire GDP. That's insane. We're not talking about a nice little boost to the economy. We're talking about an economy that is literally being kept afloat by its people working hundreds of miles away in Russia.
And the sheer amount of cash we're talking about is just staggering. In a single year, 2013, workers from Central Asia sent $13.5 billion home from Russia. This isn't just pocket change. This is the money that builds houses. It's the money that pays for a kid's education. It's the money that starts new businesses. It's an absolute lifeline for millions of families and a pillar of their national economies.
So, yeah, the benefit for countries like Tajikistan is pretty clear. But let's flip the coin. What does this huge influx of labor actually mean for Russia? How is their economy, their whole society really, shaped by this?
Well, let's look at the official numbers. In 2014 alone, Russia gave out 687,000 work permits just to people from Uzbekistan. I mean, think about that. That's the population of a pretty big city in 1 year from one country. These are the people filling crucial jobs in construction, in transportation, in all kinds of services, jobs that locals often can't or don't want to do. They're literally keeping the Russian economy running.
But is that the whole story? Of course not. Whenever you're talking about migration this big, the official numbers, well, they almost never tell you everything. The number of permits is one thing, but what happens when we look at the data a little differently?
And here's where it gets really interesting. In that same year, remember the 687,000 work permits for Uzbek nationals? Well, over 1.2 million were officially registered as living in Russia. That massive gap between permits and people tells you something huge. The real size of this workforce, both documented and not, is way, way bigger than the official stats would have you believe. So what's the big takeaway here? This isn't just a bunch of people making individual choices. This has evolved into a massive, interconnected economic system. But that deep connection, it's a double-edged sword. Central Asian economies are almost dangerously dependent on that money coming in, while Russia's economy is basically addicted to this flow of labor. It gives both sides a weird kind of power over the other, but it's a really risky game for everyone involved.
And that really leaves us with one big, final question to think about. When you have millions of people and billions of dollars flowing back and forth like this, when economies and cultures get so deeply intertwined, what does a border even mean anymore? It stops being just a line on a map, doesn't it? It feels more like, well, just a permeable membrane in one giant living, breathing system.